Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum and good morning to all distinguished participants. Um, thank you, Acting President Janjua and IPRI for organizing this and giving me this opportunity to exchange views. Without much ado, I'm going into the whole idea of what you asked me to talk about, which is the impact of Hindutva ideology on Indian internal and external policies. Now, let me first start with what Hindutva has done to South Asia, because this is important to me and I think to all of us, just a little bit, and then go into what has been happening since August 5th and before, a little bit before, and then forward into the region and its implications for Pakistan. Now, what has Hindutva done to South Asia? It's since 2014 brought a new BJP to power in India, and it's very different from Vajpayee BJP. South Asia has been forced to forsake its history, its people, its potential, and its actual future as the great new regional powerhouse for growth in the 21st century. Many papers have been written on the subject and much conference time all over South Asia, all over Asia, and all the globe has been expended on the search for peace and how it can unlock a new regional equilibrium for South Asia. Many possibilities of trade, connectivity, energy, culture, and crucial climate cooperation have been jettisoned in this new Hindutva vision which has come to the fore, principally in a larger sense, as a majoritarian sense, since 2014. But since 2019, when Narendra Modi won a second large majority in the Indian elections, this trend has amplified egregiously, both in terms of strategic change in the regional equilibrium, but also the quantum of escalated risks to stability across a number of dynamic and changing spectrums. Now, what has been happening? Three things. First, now with the backdrop is the attempted annexation of illegally occupied Kashmir on August 5th, 2019. Three things have defined, to my mind, and I look to be educated, a dangerous new normal. One is that the idea of India, very important to many Indians, as defined by its founding fathers, obviously the Nehruvian Compact, is going through a sea change. We all know that. While Hindutva as an ideological wellspring for the Sangh Parivar or Hindu coalition of forces in India has existed as a muscular strain in political thought since pre-independence, well pre that, to understand its impact on policy making today, one has to delve into its meaning and conceptual origins. These were first defined by a prominent Hindu nationalist called Vinaya Savarkar in a pamphlet called Hindutva, Who is a Hindu? Why its genus or birth is important is because, not birth, but its genus is important because it situates India's decision-making impulse in a domestic context of a civilizational Hindu identity that is united first and last by its blood bond of a Hindu fatherland, which requires constant defense against imagined and real invaders. Don't forget that its paramilitary arm, the RSS, was initially formed in response to the Khilafat movement. So history always matters. Then Hindutva is an ideology, therefore, that requires a constant narrative iteration of its ontology of insecurity of a people under siege. Narendra Modi's entire populist project is based on presenting himself and his ideology as an ontological provider of that security, a safe haven which needs a thought binary of exclusion and other internal fault lines of division as well. In its authoritarian roots, which require democratic majoritarian consent, it closely resembles, as you said, the ideological essence of fascism, as both the invocation of real and imagined enemies against which their nationalist muscularity must aggress. So there's always an enemy needed. This is why the constructive collective identity underlying Hindutva does not include Christians, Parsis, Jews, or Muslims, with the latter now being frontline as Muslims being frontline as an eternal and unforgivable other. Obviously, the background of this is that Muslims have ruled India for many years, and the consistent erasure of history that the Modi Hindutva project entails. We have all seen through Romila Thapar and other independent Indian thinking, thought leaders and historians' views of how the Muslim past is to be slowly erased. Secondly, does Hindutva provide a template for domestic governance or a specific roadmap detailing a foreign policy? Actually, no, it does not. Popular view is that it does. It provides a robust cultural and political narrative base for Modi to enlist it in the service of domestic and international postures that can selectively be used to define a majoritarian security policy at home, where Hindus need protection to enact their religious destinies, manifest destinies, and a foreign policy that can keep India in an aggressor's role with no explanation needed other than a broad civilization one or a doctrine to a frenzied electorate for any rational motive or outcome. This is important. No rational motive this is not a blueprint or day-to-day policy roadmap given in Hindutva. It's a broad civilizational underpinning, and it seeks constant aggression, but it can be utilized specifically by a Hindu ruler using the ideology in ways that suit them politically, both domestically and externally. So, and third, how has Hindutva changed India's posture and policy in the region? Hindutva's potency and use as an instrument of both domestic and foreign policy has in the last 1 year, in my view, undergone exponential transformations. It has received a rich political soil in which to foster its views and collect an identity around what it sees as a new pole of Hindutva posturing. This means that from 2019, the institutional limits of translating Hindutva into a strategic enabler of policy have been gradually removed. There's a whole structure at the Indian External Affairs policy community, and obviously there's a thought process, there is resistance to that, but it is being slowly dismantled. And there now is an unapologetic view with a new strain of majoritarian expression, both at home and abroad. Now it's also overtaken the Nehruvian spokesman. In policy parlance, this means a potential shift from political pragmatism to an overt ideological commitment, which now comes into play. This explains how Modi has been able to take on probably much more than he can chew, both in Kashmir and the South Asian neighborhood. In this identity-led framework of policy agendas, where he doesn't really have to justify a rational dotted line in potential outcomes, the role of domestic primacy is both cause and effect. He doesn't have to justify to a public as to where this will lead India or what the dividends of peace could mean for India. No, he doesn't need to justify constant state of conflict because he's using ideology. So there's no rational explanation needed. And what it creates is cultural and media products that either keep India under siege from without, in their imaginarium, in the Hindutva imaginarium, causing a chain of events in the external sector. You saw Balakot and Pulwama, or responds to it creates a bad domestic outcome in response to bad domestic outcomes such as poor economic performance or COVID policy challenge disasters. Now, examples abound, and I'll give you one or two. An upcoming state or general election, for instance, where BJP's majority is challenged, take Bihar in November, becomes a narrative space where external threats to India must be invoked by an otherized rival. The otherized rival is Pakistan, quite uniquely so. And this is why you hear of scaled up violence on the LOC, or a false flag operation that becomes politically pivotal for manufacturing consent around a hyper-real, ultra-nationalist public conversation. You hear it on the media all the time. The media has become what I call Fox on steroids. It is that ultra-hyper, with a few exceptions. George Verghese provides a classic example in his book where the Hindu great growth of rate, is lamented. This is as back as 1978 by an economist, Raj Krishna, who has no connection to Hindutva, but Hindutva politicians today use it to decry a self-coined Hindu timidity and India's alleged lack of progress, which they argue is due to the subjugation of Indian society by foreigners, the foreigners being Afghans, Mughals, Timurids, before them Muslims. In this worldview, the more aggressive Hindutva rate of growth, as opposed to the Hindu rate of growth, is now akin to the infamous Gujarat development model, as pursued by Narendra Modi when he was CM, Chief Minister of the state, from 2002 to 2014. In this march of the political Hindu, now you have a political Hindu, Ayodhya in 1992 was a crisis of the Nehruvian political order when the Babri Mosque was destroyed, and it is Ayodhya again in 2020, which was the center of gravity on August 5th for Modi's final attempted erasure of India's multicultural past and its secular constitution. The linkage of all such acts of a new civilizational order with an expression of naked state power over Kashmir, which parts are Muslim, was an attempt to confer a strong cloak of Hindutva legitimacy to his actions on a disputed territory. In celebrating the Ram temple on the anniversary of its illegality in Kashmir, he was also attempting to indemnify the stripping of Kashmiri identity, which is very important to Kashmiris, with the impunity he seeks via the ideology of Hindutva. So the ideology confers both impunity as well as no need for a political rationale. The Ram Mandir now being erected on the mosque told that tale to all of India. It's Muslims, it's Kashmiris, and the world. That Hindutva provides the ideology that legitimizes state terror. You can call it saffron, you can call it what you like, military action, and even attempts at illegal annexation. So Hindutva provides what is called as a unifying myth and legitimizing policy formulation for doing what in the rational world would seem very, very open for challenge. And certainly there is. I'm not saying for 1 minute that there is only one India. It's important to always remember there are many Indias still at play today. The revoking of Article 370 of the Indian Constitution has also been, let's remember, a key part of the BJP's core agenda and has always struck an emotional chord with its rank and file after there was an ideologue called Syama Prasad Mukherjee who died in a Jammu and Kashmir jail in 1953 to protest the state's special status and demand its complete integration into the Union. Another one, so it's not a new thing, but it's obviously gathered state momentum now. Another one of the BJP's core tenets is that a Hindu temple should be built on the disputed site where a 16th century mosque was raised by a Hindu mob in 1992. So that circle is being completed in their historical and political contemporary reality now. And it is under Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his confidant Amit Shah, both unabashed practitioners of Hindutva politics, that the BJP has made rapid strides in meeting this agenda. The repeal of 370 is one of the three key BJP planks besides building Ram Temple at Ayodhya and implementing a uniform civil code, which have given the party its distinct Hindutva and nationalist identity. The construction of the temple is less of an ode to the principles of faith and more the celebration of three of the most significant features of the Sangh Parivar: the ideological virility, second, ability to deliver on core promises, and third, the quest to redefine the national imagination, which they're all doing. Now, the Citizen Amendment Act, which has divided India along religious lines, clearly sets a fault line of faith that the BJP seeks to divide India along. It seeks to deepen it and reinforce it, and is a clear symbol of the new India that Modi's politics has promised. It changes the nature of citizenship in the Indian constitution. We have that here, where today exclusions will be made on the basis of your particular religion, in this case, Muslim. The National Registry in Assam does the same, where immigrants are kept in detention centers. Amit Shah regularly says that there are no detention centers in India, but there are currently 6 detention centers, with more being built. Amit Shah and other top BJP officials have also promised a nationwide registry similar to the one in Assam, where those who fail to establish an Indian lineage with a box asking you your religion will be stripped of any rights. Now, these have profound consequences of how India thinks of itself and therefore how it thinks of its role abroad. Impacts on the region, the next quick part. In my view, populism in the politics of ultranationalism is always dangerous in a global and regional environment where the relative certainties guaranteed by unipolarity, which is one big global hegemon, have been dismantled. Why? Because multipolarity is always more chaotic in realist theory than a global context with one unambiguous leader, which is a role that the US has been playing. Yet its recent but regular relinquishing of that role has created a much more fluid and competitive strategic global moment. I'm not going into conversation about the Thucydides trap and if China is challenging that order or not, but it is doing so in its own. China is doing so according to its own telos, its own logic. It obviously, this kind of environment obviously opens the door for opportunities such as the one China is taking, and in multilateral forums, take the WHO or the Climate Change Forum, but also enhances a range of risks in regional alliances. India's easy embrace of America is enhanced by Modi and Trump's populism, but these are buttressed by underlying structural realities such as the strength of Indian diasporas as well as its economy and growing defense needs, which are aligned now with the United States, the French. You see the sale, the buying of Rafales and other expensive equipment. India is the largest defense shopper in the world. Now, when ideology therefore begins to assert influence over foreign policy, it becomes very close to a model that defies strategic predictability. That's important, as well as moral imperative. Speaking of moral imperative, for many years, Modi and other BJP politicians have boasted about taming the enemy within. They boasted about this and taunted Muslims for their supposed involvement in terrorism and sympathy for Pakistan. His words at one point during the Gujarat years were so strong that Modi was briefly subject to travel bans from the United States, Britain, and some European nations, and was refused a travel visa to the United States in 2005. Now, the intervening years have only seen Modi strengthen his anti-Islam stance, helping to entrench Islamophobia among an eager audience. In effect, he has taken the underlying ideology of the RSS and made it a government agenda through laws that adversely affect Muslims. The Constitution of India is being altered, and its courts are also playing along. The point I make here is that the dictates of power will allow Modi to escape moral censure, both by some Muslim countries, as you can see, and its principal ally of the United States. Now, Hindutva and foreign policy, very quickly, I want to say that the foreign policy commentariat is divided on Modi and foreign policy, principally because there are many Indian voices on the global stage. In my view, there are two Narendra Modis. One is the strong man who is ready to assert India's Hindu identity across India itself, and in what he considers weaker states in the region. The other Modi is the pragmatic transaction seeker who will reluctantly defer to powers such as China. And you saw that in the standoff in Ladakh, how they negotiated and brokered that entire standoff. But on a broader global States seeks a seat at the multilateral table by projecting economic power. And there he tries to act rationally. The projection of national power is more seen as national, and Hindutva is aligned more as a cultural influence, as yoga, as India's large peace-seeking, almost Buddhist-like influence, soft power. So he channels it differently for different audiences. And there obviously he's also projecting his market. India market is huge. You can see the whole Huawei disconnect. The decoupling is very traumatic for everyone. But as a different, he plays by a different set of rules. In the forums where he is a big arms shopper from US, the United States, France, and Russia, it plays by a different set of rules, which, while investing in demonizing Pakistan as a terror facilitator, he becomes a transactor of rational economic and global policy. So there are two different modis, one in the closer region, and then one on the global stage. Pakistan is a particular thorn in Modi's side because it notionally challenges and impedes Modi's ascent to the South Asian region's hegemon. India's China neighbor is also, northern neighbor is also an obvious rival. I mean, there's no discussion on that. The scuffle in Galwan Valley is old news now, but the situation and the perceived loss of face due to India's inability to put its actions behind its words there has left PM Modi's Hindutva movement, even in India, a little battered. It was questioned very vociferously and robustly on the Indian media. And then they all turned around to square that circle and to tie it up with a rational actor, India the rational actor, whereas China was concerned. There was not enough rational thought put into Indian moves in Kashmir, however, and there was not enough of that discussion because this part of the standoff stemmed from India's unilateral decision to try and change the regional situation of Kashmir and Ladakh areas, not playing according to script, and that is a serious load. It will become a serious roadblock to the Hindu juggernaut in the region because Hindutva is right now at play more inside India and its closer region. Why is China and its BRI with CPEC as its poster child such a target for joint US-India containment? The answers are very obvious. But it's more due to the fact that India can never be considered a great power until it can gain supremacy in its own backyard, which at this point of China's progress and ambitions are going to make that dream virtually impossible. American interests in the Middle East also become potentially tested in this entire equation. Again, China's masterstroke in Iran versus Chabahar has also left India short of a regional ally that could have been used to encircle Pakistan even further, with Afghanistan already in the mix. Now, I can go into India's relationship with its neighbors and the whole European relationships with the Middle East, with Pakistan and China. But what we see right now is, I think there's a lot of room for talking about that. And other people better than me are certainly going to discuss that. But it's very clear to me that Pakistan and India have clearly gone in two different directions. And if we, in this whole context of a unipolar moment passing, Pakistan becoming vulnerable to the Quad and to the Indian and United States maritime and Pacific power play. So in that, obviously, Pakistan's relationship with China is very critical, and they are being seen as two camps. Having said that, I want to say I don't think China is also looking at the world in old South Asia or old Cold War lenses, because the old Cold War was definitely divided up the war literally with a physical Iron Curtain, and you had to be in one camp or the other. The world is more complex now. And the world of supply chains is crucial to how diplomacy is conducted and how policy is played out. And India is a player in all of that. India is a player in all of that. It continues to trade with China. It continues to, it has, for instance, done a surgical strike on on Chinese apps, but it's not been able to do much more. And I think we should just step back a little and see in which context India will operate as a diplomatic manager of a rational economic-based policy while still seeking great power status in the world, where you've given India a UNSC seat. And I think I still say that we should have contested it after August 5th last year, and given Pakistan's vulnerabilities, and will continue to target Pakistan as an exceptional thorn in its grand Hindutva ideology, a projection of power at home. It needs that projection of power at home. It will not do so in the region beyond. I mean, it has its its relationship with Bhutan, Maldives, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh are all in a state of transition, and you can make a strong case for saying all the neighbors are right now estranged with India and are pushing back against what they see as a very overweening regional hegemon. Having said that, India is perfectly able to stabilize its relationship with these neighbors also, and it is Pakistan that needs to look at evolving a stable, articulated foreign policy that is not purely just reactive, but it is linked to making sovereign choices, which further, as China does, link it to its economic strength. So right now, India is not in a happy position with China's GDP 4 to 5 times bigger than it. Wasn't anticipating that 20 years ago. This was not the case. It is the case today. And the same goes for the Chinese defense profile. It is still overpowered by the United States. By no stretch of the imagination is American military power any challenge for a single power anywhere. But alliances are complex, and the world of regional and Asian and Pacific power play is changing very fast, especially in the maritime region of the Pacific Ocean. And last thought I want to park with all of you is that there is a great deal of neuralgia in both India and the United States about China linking from Gwadar to through Ural, through its big BRI projects, taking CPEC to linking it to the BRI projects through the Eurasian heartland and reaching the Atlantic Ocean, which makes China a two-ocean power. And that poses to the Quad a huge challenge, both not just in the South China Sea, but everywhere, right down to the Indian Ocean, which again becomes a problem for Pakistan. So we need to look at these complexities and play them out. With these last words, I want to thank IPRI and the panelists for listening so patiently. And I look forward to hearing what you all have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Sherry Rehman. We could not have asked for more erudite, immaculate analysis for setting the floor for further discussion. Now,